Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We're in Behaalotecha. I'm not going to start at the beginning of the Parsha. I'm going to start at chapter 11 of the book of Numbers. So if you're following along in a Chumash or any kind of text, then I invite you to look at chapter 11. I will share my screen and my text. The Parsha begins, Behaalotecha, when you cause the flames to go up, meaning when you light the menorah. There's beautiful commentary on that line that we did several years ago. Maybe we'll do it again next year, because the verb should be lahadlik, when you light the menorah. But it isn't. Behaalotecha means when you cause it to go up. So the rabbis are like even in biblical Hebrew, that's the wrong verb. Like, what the heck is up with that? So there's all this gorgeous commentary from our spiritual tradition about what is the purpose of the menorah? What is the purpose of light? It's about lifting us up. Each flame causes another one beside it to be lifted up, and that is what causes the light to be lifted up, and that's the light by which we see, and the light of truth. And so there's all this beautiful commentary about why this verb is used in the Torah. But we're going to jump to chapter 11 and look at what's happening there, because Moshe finds himself in very much the situation that a lot of us are feeling right now. And let's look at how Torah. Vayhi ha'am k'mit onenim ra be'oznei Adonai v'yishma Adonai v'yichar apo v'tiv'ar bam esh Adonai batochal b'ktsei ha'machane. So the people, and it was that the people were as complainers, and that was ra, that was bad in the ears of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh here heard, and God's nostrils flared. And that is a euphemism for God got very angry. And when God gets angry, as we've seen before, when God's nostrils flare, a fire often breaks out. And a fire breaks out at the edge of the camp and was kind of consuming the edge of the camp. Those of us who live in a fire zone know that it doesn't matter that it's just at the ktseh hamachane, the edges of the camp. It is terrifying when you are in the Midbar, when you're in the wilderness in this kind of a climate and there's fire. They are terrified, rightly so. So we kind of read over because nothing terrible seems to happen and it's just at the edges of the camp. But you can imagine their terror seeing smoke and fire. So what do? Vayitzak ha'am, right? They cry out. Who do they cry out to? Of course, to Moshe. So they're freaking out. They cry to Moshe. Vayit palel Moshe el Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. And what is Moshe's response? Moshe prays to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, v'tishka ha'esh, and the fire died down. Okay. So as usual, something happens. The people panic. They turn to Moshe, and Moshe intervenes. And the name of this place was called Teve'era, because that's where the fire broke out against. Now we get another incident. We've studied this a lot, and so I don't want to say too much about it, but the asafsuf, this is onomatopoeia. Asafsuf is riffraff. So that's exactly what the Hebrew here is doing, is what we do with the English riffraff. It is onomatopoeia for kind of the unsavory ones among them. Asher b'kirbo, that was in their midst, in the midst of what? The midst of the people. So the riffraff in the midst of the people, hit avu ta'ava, literally, and Aviva Zorenberg has a lot to say about this. Hit avu ta'ava, they craved a craving. Vayashuvu, vayivku, gam b'nei Yisrael, vayomru, mi yachilenu basar. So the riffraff that was in their midst was craving a craving. That's the literal translation. You could see this as an intensification. So they were way craving, like really craving. So this says gluttonous craving. But literally it's they craved a craving. Vayashuvu, vayivku. So they are weeping. Also, Bnei Israel. So Bnei Israel, the people of Israel, join with the riffraff and are sobbing and weeping and crying. And they say, who will feed us meat? Okay. Zacharnu et hadaga asher nochal b'Mitzrayim. We remember the fish that we ate b'Mitzrayim chinam, for free. And the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlics. Ve'ata, and this is not an aleph, this is an ayin. Ve'ata, and now nafshenu yevesha. This says our gullets, but nefesh is really the self. Now our whole selves are dried out, right? Are ossified. Ein kol bilti el haman enenu. We got nothing at all except this manna. Now we're getting an editorial comment from the omniscient author, meaning from the omniscient author's perspective. Ve'haman kizra gadhu ve'enu ke'en habdolach. So the manna was like coriander seed, and in color it was like bdellium. Don't even get me started. Again, a lot of these things, we're not sure about the translation. We could talk about it forever, but we're not gonna right now. The people would go about and gather it and grind it between millstones or pound it into a mortar, boil it in a pot and make it into cakes. It tasted like rich cream, says this translation. When the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna would fall upon it. And that's how that was the delivery system. When the dew fell at night, the manna fell on the dew, and that preserved the manna so it didn't melt. And then they would collect it in the morning. Now that was an insert. That was an editorial insert. Now we're going back to the narrative, the story. Vayishma Moshe et ha'am bocheh lemishpachotav. So Moshe heard the people crying, ish lefetach ohalo. So every family with, people at the opening of their tent, and that Yud-He Vav-He was very angry. And ve'enei Moshe ra. And in Moshe's eyes, it was awful. Vayomer Moshe el Yud-He Vav-He. And Moshe turns to God and says, why have you dealt so badly with your servant, Avdecha, meaning him, V'lama lo matzati chen ve'enecha, and why have I not found favor in your eyes, that you have put the burden of this people alai, on me? Anochi hariti et ha'am hazeh, did I conceive this people? Was I pregnant with this people? Did I birth them? That you should say to me, carry them in your bosom, the way the nursemaid does, to the land that you have promised on oath to their ancestors. Where am I to get basar? Where am I to get meat to give to this whole people that are crying to me? Alai actually means on me. Lemor, saying, Tna lanu vasar v'nochela, give us meat that we might eat it. Now that's not exactly what they said, right? What they said was, who will give us meat? It's Moshe who interprets that, right, as them saying, give us meat. Maybe that's a scene we're missing. Maybe that's a part of the tradition that was oral that didn't get written down. Or it's Moshe interpreting their words. What we know is that this is what Moshe is experiencing. Lo uchal anochi levadi laseit et kol ha'am hazeh ki kaved mimeni. It is not possible for me alone. This is the verb we had last week, naso, right? Laseit, to carry, et kol ha'am hazeh, this whole people. Ki kaved mimeni, because it is too heavy for me. Im kacha, ve'im kacha, and if it's going to be so, hargeni na, kill me, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, and let me no longer see ra'ati, the awfulness that is mine. And God says to Moshe, gather for me 70 elders, 70 from the elders of Israel, asher yadata, ki hem ziknei ha'am, Vishotrav, that you trust that they have experienced being elders and leaders, V'lakach ta'otam el ohel moed, and take them to the tent of meeting, V'hit yatzvu sham imach, and we know this word nitzav, right, like a monument, have them plant themselves there with you, and I will come down and speak with you there, and I will draw upon the spirit, the ruach, asher alecha, that's on you, v'samti alehem, and I will put it on them, meaning some of the ruach, Moshe, that you have, I'm going to put on them, alehem. Here we have naso again. Here we have this verb from last week that we explored. Again, v'nasu itcha, and they will carry the burden with you. The burden of what? Of the people. Ha'am. V'lo tisa ata levadecha, and you shall not carry it by yourself. And you tell the people, purify yourselves. See, here's the kuf daled shin, and it's reflexive. So have them each purify themselves, lemachar, for tomorrow, and you'll eat meat. For you've kept complaining before Yod-Heh-Vav said, saying, if only we had meat to eat, indeed we were better off in Egypt. Yod-Heh-Vav will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not eat one day, not two, not even 5 days or 10 or 20, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you. For you have rejected Yod-Heh-Vav, who is among you, by whining before God and saying, oh, why did we ever leave Egypt? But Moshe says, the people who are with me number 600,000 foot soldiers. Yet you say, I will give them enough meat to eat for a whole month. We don't have enough animals for that, God. And then he does this hyperbole. Are you going to get all the fish from the sea then? And God says, that's enough, thank you, Mr. Busy. And says, is there a limit to Yod-Heh-Vav's power? You'll see whether or not what I've said will happen or not. Moshe went out and reports this. He gathers the 70 elders. God comes down and speaks in a cloud. Part of Moshe's spirit rests on them. This is, of course, where we get speaking in tongues. They spoke in ecstasy. Two of them continue to do so. They stay in the camp. We're not sure why. And they continue to, if you want, prophesy or speak, in this way that the divine spirit causes them to speak. And somebody goes and tattles to Moshe. And Moshe says, look, I wish everybody would. Don't be jealous on my account. I wish everybody in Israel would be prophets and speak, from the Ruach of Yod-Heh-Vav, the Spirit of God. That was another aside, as now we get this wind from God bringing quail up from the sea, and strews them all around the camp. And they gathered quail all day into the next day, and the meat was still between their teeth, not yet chewed, when the anger of God blazed forth against them. And there was a plague. And then we get the end of chapter 11. Okay, lovely. All right. So very much tongue-in-cheek, very much a story that Torah is knowing when it tells it this way. It is humorous. It is definitely a story of not only a people complaining, but this is very much a toddler. Anyone who's been around children or teenagers knows scenes like this and knows the sarcasm and knows, even if we don't answer with sarcasm, knows the desire to answer with sarcasm. And so it's very aware. Torah is very aware of that. So Torah, do not think that this is a simplistic text. And this is definitely tongue-in-cheek. This is definitely the author telling the story the same way all of us would deal with having had it with complaining from a partner, from a child, from a German Shepherd mix who just wants to play constantly and won't stop complaining if you don't. So this Torah is absolutely coming at this from a human experience and putting those emotions onto both Moshe and onto God and understands what it's doing. And so on one level, we can laugh because we totally recognize this. On the other level, and you can read it in lots of different ways. Yes, two Siamese mixed kittens, you get it, right? So, exactly. And it's exhausting. From whining to wisdom, right? So what it's doing is it's using story, it's using metaphor, it's using a scene of complaining, and then Moshe being in despair, God being exasperated, as this is so often the condition. We're just taking one scene and magnifying it, but it's really a story. And I read it differently each year that I come to it, as we always do, because we come to all of these stories through the lens of our own experience. And often I'm really sad for Moshe. that I feel like Moshe is like, he's on the ropes. Like Moshe has hit the wall. And that as funny as the story can read, because it's human nature, and the dripping sarcasm of, we had this food for free in Egypt. All it cost was your freedom, right? So it's like, the Torah understands this to be funny and dripping with, irony and sarcasm and all that stuff. So, but it's also a real moment of despair for Moshe, because he understands that on some level, the people really mean it, right? On some level, they believe in this moment the delusion that life was better in Egypt because they don't like how it is right now. So even though we can say with clarity they are out of their minds, of course it wasn't better in Egypt, Moshe's having to confront a people that really believes that in this moment. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? When somebody says, this will be better for the country, what do you say to somebody who really believes what they're saying that you think is crazy? And you're like, wait a minute, where do I even begin to engage in this conversation when it's my responsibility to answer you? So it's not just like Moshe can say, I'm not going to have this conversation. This is ridiculous. You're full of it. Moshe's their leader. They're expecting Moshe to give them meat, or at least that's how Moshe interprets it. And he's their leader. If they turn on him, we know he and Aaron have feared for their lives before, right? So he goes to the only source he can go to, which is God, to say, what am I supposed to do? I can't do it anymore. If you're going to ask me to carry this crazy people, listen to them. Listen to what they're saying. If this is what I'm supposed to deal with, kill me now. Do me a kindness and kill me now. And I think Moshe means it. I don't think Moshe is being sarcastic. I mean, he's of course he's exaggerating, but I think he means it. I think he's at the absolute bottom, and he is in a place of utter and complete despair, not knowing what to do with this country that seems to have lost its mind. The nation seems to have lost its mind. And Moshe doesn't know how to respond to insanity and delusion. What are you supposed to do with that? All right. You can see why I kind of resonated with commentary about this part of the Parsha this morning, because it does feel crazy making to have to try to engage in certain ways with things that seem insane. What are you supposed to do with a nuclear Iran? I don't know, and I'm not suggesting I know, but that's a crazy question to have to ask. Existentially, somebody who has declared that they want to destroy us, we have information, again, I don't know if it's true, but we've gotten information that they are on the cusp of being able to do exactly that. What do we do? That is a crazy question. Do you poke that bear and risk annihilation? What do you do, says one of our Torah study participants this morning, with a fascist United States? What do you do when you love your country and you see it sliding towards fascism? What do you do when you love your neighbor or want to, and they have a lawn sign that makes you want to say, kill me now. Just kill me now. If this is the way it's going, just shoot me. I can't. Right. So this is a real moment. So on the one hand, it's funny because we've all been there. And you understand how Moshe is tearing his hair out. God's had it. The people are nuts. We've been on both sides. The people, because we're done. We're tired of this. Like, we don't want it to be like this. So we know that. And we know the exasperation of Moshe and of God. So we know the position of all of these characters because we've been in all of these places. We are in it now. And it feels crazy making. And that is what Torah is getting at. That is in so many ways, so many times, in so many situations, the actual human condition. It's crazy making. And there's not a simple answer. Even God loses God's temper several times in this parsha with the blazing forth, but also with the you want meat? I'll give you meat. I don't know, but like one of the worst things my father ever said to me, because he was completely exasperated with our complaining and whining and whatever. And he said, you want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. Like, you've got nothing. What the hell are you crying about? Knock it off. You want something to cry about? I'll give you something to cry about. Like, it was the scariest thing he'd ever said to us as kids, right? And because he had it. That's where we find God right now. God has had it. You want meat? I'll give you meat. Not one day, not 2 days. I'm going to give you McDonald's quarter pounders till it's coming out your nose. That's how much meat I'm going to give. This is not a loving response to, I will take care of your needs, right? This is you ungrateful, whining, complaining, delusional, selfish people. I'll fix this. All right. So let's look at how some of our folks, where shall I start? All right. Let's start with just kind of a generalized one from Larry Bach, who comes to everything from a mindfulness perspective. This is from IJS, from the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. He says, memory is a funny thing. The Israelites' nostalgia for Egypt as a land of plenty doesn't square with what we know of their experience in the iron blast furnace, right, that it's described as in Deuteronomy, as slaves to Pharaoh. To fondly remember Egyptian cuisine seems from the outside rather strange. It is not. It is actually a very human response to their current state of affairs, with, quote, nothing but this manna around them. They are experiencing what the Buddhist tradition calls tanha, craving or desire. Its most basic translation is thirst. Specifically, theirs is a craving for things to be different. They've got manna, so they want something else. If a plate of perfectly seasoned fish, a cucumber leek salad, and a side of melon slices had shown up, they would have waxed nostalgic for manna. The nature of the Israelites' desire is more obvious in the original Hebrew, rendered as gluttonous craving. We read hitavu te'ava, literally, they craved craving, or their appetite was for appetite. This language suggests that it wasn't a deficiency in the manna or anything inherently wonderful about fish, cucumbers, and the like that brought on their desire. They had the one, so they wanted the other. It was appetite itself that they wanted. They wanted things to be. So I laughed when I read that commentary because I thought to myself, every time I think to myself, I wish I had my house. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. And as I wake up in this multi-million-dollar home at 4th and Alta, where I am staying for free with people who say, stay as long as you like with your dog that's huge and young. Really? 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 Aim? Really? Really? So I get it, right? So we want things to be different. And okay, like on the one hand, I get it. On the other hand, Larry Bach is not wrong that their sin, the reason God is angry, according to many commentators, is not because they complained that they wanted meat. It's that they craved a craving. They were attached to longing for something. They were insatiable, literally, right? Nothing they were going to get was going to sate them because they were craving the craving. So that's why God is so frustrated, is because it isn't about the substance. It's about they wanted it to be different. However it was, they wanted something else. And you can't really do anything with that. There's nothing you can bring forward if they're going to want the other. And when children get tired and you're like, do you want this one or this one? They want another one. And it's like, I don't have another one. I have this one or this one. I want the yellow one. I have a red one and a blue one. I don't have a yellow one, right? And so it's that sense of frustration. It's like, I'm giving you everything I have and I know you're going to want another one. If I got you a yellow one, now you want a green one. And this is God's frustration. Moshe understands it too, that they are twisting their memory of Egypt because they're craving something different than what is. And can we be happy? Bert Kleinman brings forward, who is satisfied? Sameach bechelko, the one that is happy with their chelek, with their portion. Can I be happy in a multi-million-dollar home in Santa Monica? Or am I so attached to it being different because it's not what I chose, it's not what I wanted, that I can't even be grateful for what I have? Okay, so I think this is the human tendency. Torah is not blaming the Israelites, by the way, right? I actually don't see this as a criticism of the Israelites. I see it as descriptive of the human condition. And then The person who's feels like they have to fix it, their frustration. Maybe Moshe should take off his cape and quit thinking he has to save them from themselves and that he has to fix it. That's his frustration. Maybe if Moshe said, you know what, people, deal. I'm out. I'm going to Hawaii. Like, I'm going on a vacation. I'm leaving Aaron here with y'all. Maybe Moshe wouldn't be so frustrated, right? And even God, what if God had said, too friggin' bad. Here's the manna. Do with it what you will. Eat it or don't. It's what I've got for you right now. But that's not what happens. It seems that God takes it on too. God is hurt and frustrated too. Have I not done enough for you? It was free in Egypt? Really? Really? Free. Chinam. Free. Yeah. All it cost you was your entire lives. Rachel?
I feel like this could have gone another way. Like I keep wanting to rewrite the story, and that's really hard for me. It's like when I'm watching a show I really like on television or something, and I'm like, if only they'd. And then my husband says to me, yeah, but then there's no plot, Rachel. Then there's no plot. And I get really, and I'm like, oh, yeah. And I keep wanting to say, if only, like they're having an amygdala response to people, and that if only Moses had taken a breath and come back and said, like, he doesn't have to answer to the meat. He doesn't have to come up with a solution to the meat. He just has to say, I hear you. Yeah, it's frustrating. I know we're in the middle of the wilderness. That's really hard and scary. All right, people, time to go. Let's get up and move. And then like this all could have been avoided. And that there's an interesting juxtaposition because in a way, this is a nice little like bookend to last week's Parsha, because last week we were giving everybody responsibilities. And so in one sense, God answers in a really good way and says, so here's what I'm going to do. Clearly, you might have been able to deal with this better if you'd had some backup and support, because instead you flipped out too. And so clearly you can't be a single parent. I get it. You need some support. So we're going to still we need to do some more assigning of responsibilities. Okay, check. And then God goes and freaks out. So I'm just really struggling with that. Like, could we just go back, edit the script, rewrite? I know I'm having a lot of trouble here.
I know. So here's the thing. I think on some level, that's what Torah wants. I think Torah wants you frustrated, because I think sometimes the writers are just doing a crappy job because they can't come up with something other than time travel. They go back in time. I'm like, oh, please, I'm turning it off. If it's going to be about, or they appear to be one person, but they're really somebody else. I can't. That's just a cheap trick because y'all can't come up with something more creative.
Because you're just
and I get
lazy.
Nuts with the writing and I say, I'm turning it off, or I'll grit my teeth and complain all the way through it. The thing is, in this case, I don't think it's about bad writing or lazy writing.
No.
I think it really is how Torah wants us to feel, because Torah is describing the human condition. God answered, you're right. Why can't Moshe say, take a breath? I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to step out onto the patio for a minute. I'm going to smoke
I need a timeout.
And I'm going to give you a timeout, and I'm going to come back and we'll have this conversation again. God knows why Moshe can't do that, because Moshe is burned out. So God says, you need help. Yitro has already pointed this out, by the way. Mm-hmm. Right? Yitro already made this observation. So God is a little late to the party. Right? God should have also listened to Yitro and said, Yitro's right. And it needed to be more than just establishing the judiciary. I actually need some of the ruach that has been on you to be on the 70 other people, because it's more than a judiciary. There's something that people need in leaders other than what Yitro had Moshe set up. That's what God knows. God's a little late.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the point is, yes, like we get frustrated that how come it's not fixed yet? It doesn't have to be this way. But guess what? It doesn't happen on our timeline, and it doesn't happen when we want it to happen. And it's not what we want. And so anyway, I think
because the children it takes them a long time to grow up.
And I think your feeling is exactly what Torah is trying to evoke, because that is exactly what is so frustrating. And of course, we always see it from the outside when it's happening to them and God and Moses. We're not as clear when it's happening to us, right? That's exactly right. Bert?
While I don't see God as a guy with a gray beard up in the sky, even though I do have a gray beard, this is an example of how I think anthropomorphism is helpful, because this talks not to a supremely powerful, all-knowing, can do absolutely anything God, but a God who can dialogue with Moses, and a God who, I guess, theoretically could have made none of this happen because God could have fixed it all. That's one piece. The other thing is, I think it speaks to the humanness of Moses, and he is not, excuse the expression, a saint. He is not perfect. He is a human being who is struggling, and he can't deal with it. And the very, very human terms in which he dialogues with God, I find extremely powerful. And if I totally rejected anthropomorphism, I can't say the word, if I truly and totally rejected it, I couldn't even read this story. It would mean nothing. But on the other hand, the story sometimes is more true than fact.
Well, it's where characters are helpful, right? Mm-hmm. Icons, characters, mythic figure, right? That's why myth is so powerful. That's why literature is so powerful. But you need characters, right? So God needs to be a character in the story for it to be a powerful story, I think. Like you said, it's not literal. It's not that God literally lost God's temper. It's that this is a story about responsibility and complaining and wanting things to be different and being disappointed. The people are disappointed. Moshe's disappointed. God's disappointed. Everybody's disappointed in each other and frustrated. Well, welcome to situation normal, right? What is snafu? Situation normal, all screwed up. Okay. Nick, you had your hand up.
Oh yeah. It just occurred to me that, back in Exodus, when Moses is first talking to God, he tells God that he is slow of speech. He's like, pick somebody else. And then God tells him, like, what about your brother Aaron? And then here we have Moses not being very slow of speech, and has overcorrected. And yeah, as Rachel pointed out, like, probably could have used Aaron in this situation. And I just think that's an interesting contrast. And yeah, another great example of why characters and interpreting these are helpful. It's an interesting contrast, and it helps us, understand why at the end of it, God tells Moses, like, you can't enter the promised land. I kind of see that this story is like a precursor kind of to that. Moses is setting himself up for that.
Okay. So yeah, the precursor to the fact that really it's not just burnout. It's that Moshe's not able to be the leader to take them in. Susan.
I've just always seen that as God rewarding Moses, not punishing. Because what would have it done to Moses to finally get to the promised land and then see the Israelites split into because they still can't.
Okay.
And so I think it's God choosing to Moses with a moment of vision rather than him having to face yet another discouragement.
Yep. And Rachel's pointing out that leaders should not act alone is the message of this Torah portion. No kings. All right. Let's look at another commentary. I want to save her for last. All right. So this is Rabbi Noah Farkas, who is now head of Federation, president of the Federation. This is the height of despair for Moses. After the greatest liberation in history and the greatest revelation in history, it is lunch that brings Moses to the breaking. The fact that Torah includes Moses' emotional breakdown into despair is a powerful testament to what the Bible is trying to teach. Moses is unwilling to separate his inner life from his outer life. Moses is no stoic who tries to overcome his emotions because he, like God, uses emotion to lead. Despair, perhaps the darkest of emotions, can be the deepest driver of change. No one who is perfectly content asks, how can I be more content? No one who feels fine asks, how can I feel more fine? It is the harsher emotions like anger and despair that become the fuel for justice. Moses looks towards heaven and calls God out. This is the moment. It's all on the line. I'm ready to give up. Now what? Once again, the God who shapes the universe is shaped by human pain. God listens. God comforts Moses by helping him broaden his leadership to include the 70 elders of the people, and God also brings quail to feed the people. Surviving despair is a life-changing and world-changing experience. To be a Jew is to seek a difference inside ourselves and to heal the world outside of ourselves. The darkness Moses feels is the battle that must be fought over and over again so that he can have the strength to bring the nation across the wilderness. Judaism, in the words of Rabbi Sachs, is a protest against the world as it is in the name of what the world ought to be. The uncertainty we all feel at this moment, the despair that many feel right now, is an emotional wound that also brings the opportunity for change. We take our hits, we have our bad days, we come to the brink, but then we act. The South African writer and anti-apartheid activist Alan Payton once wrote, "When I go to heaven, the big judge will look at me and ask, 'Where are your wounds?' And I will say, 'I have none.' And he will say in turn, 'Was there nothing to fight for?'" The majesty of the Torah is that it recognizes that what happens within our souls is what drives the global soul. Let us feel this moment and use it to reshape the world. Rabbi Noah Farkas is focusing on the fact that, that it is exactly these moments of hitting the wall that actually drive change, that actually is going to drive some people into the streets this weekend. It's not when it's all rosy. It's these moments of utter despair, and we ignore them at our peril. Noah Farkas is saying Moshe is in alignment as a leader with his own inner experience of despair. And he gets in touch with that, and it is that which is going to drive change and enable him to go the next level of leadership, which is having a council of 70 elders to help him out, right? And maybe a better design and whatever, it's going to democratize the leadership because it's not working. And he doesn't ignore that out of ego or pride. He gets it. It's not working. And so he lines up his understanding of his leadership responsibilities with the despair inside that says it's not working. So I like that interpretation of, okay, we can get it that it's not working, but we can't just say, okay, so I give up. We need to turn somewhere and go, all right, what do we need to do? What needs to change? And what part do I have in responsibility for making that change possible and making that change happen? I think that's a very Jewish way to understand this text. Okay, now we're going to look at Dr. Mijal Bitton, who points out that the beginning of the Parsha, everything's perfect. The lighting of the menorah, the priests do their jobs, it's also beautiful, the Levites are camped, they blow the trumpets, everyone breaks down the camp and puts it together, everything's going perfectly. And so she points out that's how this starts. A pristine vision, the Levites perfectly arrayed, every tribe in its place, silver trumpets sound, blah, blah, blah. She says, when I was younger, I read this with mounting dread, knowing what was coming, right? So she as a kid knew the story. So every time Rachel is starting out, and they're starting to do something about time travel, right? It's like, oh no, here it comes. Like, I know what's coming. The collapse comes quickly. Egypt, a place of slavery and attempted genocide, is remembered for abundance and freedom. Oppression is rewritten into paradise. She says Torah is highlighting a pattern, not recording a failure. What does that mean? Here's what the Torah is showing us. When you begin the journey expecting perfection, you will collapse the moment things go a different way. And when that collapse comes, you will reach backward, not to the real past, but to a version you've reimagined. When the wilderness gets hard, when the manna tastes bland, the path unclear, the community fractures. The mind creates illusions instead of preparing for the hard work of navigating instability. It transforms captivity into comfort. It turns oppression into stability. The Israelites don't just miss Egypt, they reinvent it as the opposite of what it was. Maybe this is how nostalgia always works. We don't remember the past. We reshape it to suit the present. We edit out the pain and amplify the sweetness. We turn the way things were into the way things should be. But this rewriting doesn't just distort memory. It's dangerous nostalgia that paralyzes the future. You can't build tomorrow out of a yesterday that never was. You can't walk forward if your energy is spent looking back at mirages. The Torah is warning us. Idealizing the journey leads to disillusionment. Romanticizing the past keeps us from moving at all. So she is talking about this idea of how we as American Jews have seen this as a land of, the Golden Medina, and that Now we're all terrified post-October 7th, and with everything that's happening, and. She says, American Jews have always been expert mythologizers. We mythologize the shtetl, forgetting poverty and persecution. We mythologize the immigrant generation, forgetting trauma and loss. We mythologize the post-war suburban boom, forgetting anxiety of assimilation. Now we're mythologizing the recent past, either as golden age perfection or as catastrophic illusion. Behaalotecha speaks directly to this. The Israelites begin with a fantasy of order, and when reality disappoints, they reach for another fantasy, that Egypt was good to them. They remember leeks and garlic, not slavery, fish, not fear. They can't live in the present, so they rewrite the past. And the Torah shows us how dangerous that is, not only because it's false, but because it paralyzes the future. The real spiritual challenge of Behaalotecha is this: can we be Jews who know they live in the wilderness and keep walking anyway? Not Jews who cling to illusions, not Jews who need clarity to act, but Jews who remain committed through uncertainty, who can hold complexity without grasping for false simplicity, who refuse to let imperfection become a reason to give up. This means accepting that American Jewish life will always be both and, thriving and threatened, rooted and rootless, successful and struggling. The wilderness isn't a detour. It is where we live. As Michael Walzer writes in his masterful Exodus and Revolution, the way to the land is through the wilderness. There is no way to get from here to there except by joining together and marching. The only way to reach the promised land is together, through the mess, through the questions, through the wilderness. We're in it, and it's up to us to keep walking.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehilat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.